When we think about cars from the 1970s, it's hard not to wonder, what were they thinking? The decade had its charm, big hair, flashy outfits, and a vibe that screams retro fun, but car design? Not so much. Why did some cars look like they were designed in the dark? Was it the oil crisis? New rules about pollution? Or is it just a serious lack of good taste? Whatever the reason, the 1970s gave us plenty of vehicles that missed the mark. From strange shapes to awkward proportions, some designs are impossible to forget, and not in a good way. Kicking off our list of those cars is the Ford Pinto, 1971 to 1980. When you name a car after a horse, you expect something bold and exciting. Maybe a little Mustang-like power? Well, the Pinto gave us none of that. Instead, it earned a reputation for something terrifying: exploding gas tanks. That's like driving around knowing that even a small crash from behind could turn your car into a fireball. That was the scary reality for Pinto owners. The problem? Ford placed the fuel tank in a terrible spot with almost no protection. To make things worse, the doors often jammed in accidents, trapping people inside. Let's get to the part that really stings. Ford knew about these dangers. They figured out it would cost just $11 per car to fix the issue, but they decided not to bother. Why? They thought paying off lawsuits would be cheaper than making the cars safe. When the public found out, the Pinto became a symbol of everything wrong with corporate greed. So, let me ask you, if you knew all this, would you ever feel safe stepping into a Pinto? For most people, the answer is an easy no way. Now, let's talk about the AMC Gremlin, 1970 to 1978, a car that might make you ask, did they think this was a good idea? It looked as if someone took a normal car, chopped off the back, and said, "Yep, that's done." That's how the Gremlin was born, a tiny car with a weird name inspired by troublemaking creatures that mess with machines. Not exactly what you want to think about when buying a car, right? It's kind of weird because it sold pretty well. AMC was struggling to keep up with Ford and GM, so the Gremlin's low price and timing helped it stand out. Still, you can't ignore how strange it looked. With a long nose, a short, stubby rear, and awkward proportions, it felt like a car that someone forgot to finish. The issues didn't stop with its looks. The ride was rough, and the suspension wasn't great, making every bump in the road feel like an event. The quirky vacuum-powered windshield wipers slowing down when you sped up only added to the comedy. Sure, it had some speed compared to other small cars, but that just got you to the embarrassment faster. Even with all its flaws, the Gremlin found a small group of fans who loved its weirdness. Maybe it was its retro vibe or just the charm of being so different. The Ford Mustang is an American legend, right? It's the car everyone thinks of when they picture style, speed, and pure muscle. But then, in the early 1970s, Ford gave us the Mustang II, and people are still asking, what went wrong? Here's the deal. Instead of building on the Mustang's legacy, Ford shrunk it down and based it on the subcompact Pinto. Yes, the Pinto. Can you imagine taking a muscle car icon and giving it the DNA of one of the most infamous cars ever? The result was a Mustang that wasn't fast, wasn't fun, and wasn't exciting to look at. And let's talk about that Gia version for a second. Ford tried to make it luxurious by adding opera windows, a padded vinyl roof, and bumpers that matched the paint. Did it work? Not really. It felt more like a cheap costume than an upgrade, and those Granada hubcaps didn't help matters. Sure, the Mustang II sold well at first, but it didn't take long for people to lose interest. Today, it's one of the least loved Mustangs ever. Now, looking back to General Motors' most puzzling decisions, the Buick Century and Oldsmobile Cutlass Aeroback of the late 1970s. When it came time to redesign their popular midsize cars, GM thought, why not go European? And what's more European than a hatchback-inspired look? Unfortunately, the results were, well, let's say they didn't win any style points. To make it funny, these weren't even real hatchbacks. They had regular trunks, but the sloping rear design made them look like something in between. Did buyers love this daring new look? Nope. Sales dropped faster than GM expected, and customers gravitated toward the more traditional wagons and coupes instead. It's almost like GM didn't realize how risky this design was, especially since they didn't even offer a standard sedan at first. Oops! By 1980, GM had to backtrack and rush out a proper sedan, though the quirky Aeroback two-door somehow hung on until 1981. Looking back, you can see why GM styling in the 1980s played it so safe. This experiment didn't go as planned. You've heard about the AMC Pacer, 1975 to 1980, the car that proudly called itself the first wide small car. Wait, what? A wide small car? That's not exactly the kind of feature people were lining up for. Designed to give passengers the space of a big car in a compact size, the Pacer looked like a rolling fishbowl. With its bubble-shaped windows and oversized glass panels, it felt less like driving a car and more like being on display in an aquarium. Sure, the big windows were supposed to improve visibility, but instead, they turned the interior into a greenhouse on wheels. It felt like sitting in the summer sun with no decent air conditioning, feeling like an ant under a magnifying glass. Not fun. And let's not even get started on the fumes from the plastic dash. Yikes! Mechanically, the Pacer had some forward-thinking safety and handling features for its time, but its heavy design and mediocre gas mileage didn't win many fans. AMC even tried to beef it up with a V8 engine option in 1978, but the result was just a bulging hood and an even stranger look. Of course, thanks to Wayne's World, the Pacer did find a little love as the Mirthmobile. But let's be real, would you want to drive around in a car that made you feel like a goldfish in a punchline? That's the Pacer for you, quirky, dorky, and unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. People who love cars often think Chevy always makes great cars, but that's not true for all models. Just look at the Chevy Chevette, a car that rarely gets a standing ovation, but quietly earned its place in the automotive world. Sure, it wasn't flashy or powerful, far from it. With a 51 horsepower engine and a 4-speed manual transmission, it was as basic as they come. No frills, no extras, just a car that got you from point A to point B, even if it grumbled a little along the way. I'll never forget the time I got an 85-mile-per-hour speeding ticket in it. Yes, you heard that right, 85 miles per hour in a Chevette? Sure, it was downhill in the Appalachians, but hey, a win's a win. Chevette was loud, tinny, and humble, but it always showed up. The last time I saw that car, it was still chugging along, refusing to quit. So, to the Chevette fan clubs out there, if they exist, you've got my respect. Vaya con Dios, little Chevette. You weren't perfect. On the bottom of our list, we have the Reliant Robin, a car that's as British as a cup of tea, but with a side of chaos. This quirky three-wheeler has been called a lot of things. The plastic pig, a rolling joke, and even the worst car ever. But love it or hate it, you can't deny its unique place in motoring history. Why three wheels, you ask? Back in the day, British laws let anyone with a motorcycle license drive one, making the Robin an affordable step up for many. Reliant leaned into this loophole, giving us the regal Rialto, and, of course, the Robin. But calling it the Robin Reliant is like calling it a mini Austin. It's just wrong. Yes, the Robin had its flaws, unstable on corners, undeniably odd-looking, and more of a car light than a proper vehicle. But its fans will tell you it was light, nimble, and surprisingly efficient, getting up to 60 miles per gallon if you drove it gently. And let's not forget its charm. Few cars can make people smile quite like Robin. Sure, it wasn't exactly pretty. With its bug-eyed headlights and humble design, it looked like it was trying a bit too hard to be a real car. But maybe that's why it's so memorable. It wasn't perfect, but it had personality. Let me know in the comments which car you think is better and which one you'd love to take for a drive. Don't forget to hit subscribe to support our channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and tap the bell so you never miss our future content.